Welcome, everybody, to the Modern Mystics podcast. I'm your host, Alana Kaivalya, and I'm really excited today to bring you Andrew Hoffman, the director of the Kaivalya Yoga Method Academy. He's been working on the academy with me since its inception. He's also a mentor to all the students on the program, and he's got some incredible stuff to share with you today on how to become an even better yoga instructor. So, Andrew, welcome, and thank you for being on the podcast.
Thank you for having me. I'm surprised it took this long to have me. What episode? What episode is this? 37, 38? No, I'm
This is
kidding.
actually episode 41.
41. Okay.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. Look, I was saving the best for not last, but just saving the best
somewhere in the middle.
for somewhere in the middle for right now. So, Andrew, thank you for
Yeah.
being here.
I'm excited to be here.
What I would love to hear from you first is just a little bit about your background, who you are, where you're from, and what you've done, not just as a yoga teacher, but as a lead mentor and the director of the Kaivalya Yoga Method Academy.
Yeah. So I am originally from New Jersey, and I grew up there, and I've relocated to a few different places. I now live out in San Diego, but I took my original teacher training. Geez, it must have been back in 2010, I want to say 2010, around there. And then going through just kind of the regular yoga teacher journey, I would say. I started teaching classes after my 200-hour. And then somewhere along the line, I want to say late 2011, early 2012 is when I ran into Alana. And ever since then, pretty much I've been taking trainings with Alana and assisting her in all of yoga teacher life adventures. We did some work together on a project down in Atlanta, but the main thing that we've been working on since, when is it, 2015?
Yep.
Yeah, so the last coming up on 6 years now has been this online journey. So I was there since the very start, but just before the whole, ever since I got I was certified to teach, I started teaching regular classes in person. I've done it all. I've owned studios. I've worked at different studios. I've worked for bigger corporate companies. So just your regular, nothing too special yoga teacher journey in terms of in-person stuff. But as I'm sure many of your listeners know, that you were really the first one to make the transition to full-time online education and teaching yoga. And I've kind of been there with you, like behind the scenes. So I'm not up front, and you don't see my face anywhere. But once you get in most of the programs and that sort of thing, I just randomly pop up and work with you. So that's over the last 6 years, it's been a lot of online mentoring. So that's been a huge part of what I've been doing with you over the last half decade.
So to be fair to my listeners, Andrew doesn't randomly pop up. He actually is very involved in working with the students on their day-to-day journey through our online program. So part of our online program involves uploading video, getting feedback, and a pretty extensive amount of testing and accountability. We really designed our program to be more like a higher education or college level experience. And Andrew, you could consider him as a teaching assistant or even a professor in his role, because he's so instructive and so involved with students. And, over the years, through your own teaching journey, Andrew, you've actually become quite an expert at anatomy and movement. And that's really your wheelhouse, isn't it?
Mm-hmm. It is. That's kind of what I tend to enjoy and study. And I've taken a few anatomy specific trainings with teachers and that sort of thing. So that is definitely where I tend to lean towards in terms of what I enjoy learning, what I enjoy teaching about and mentoring students that go through the program on. So
people have a lot of questions about anatomy, don't they? It can be really challenging.
Anatomy can be definitely a challenging subject, especially in a teacher training format. The brilliant part about the online format is that you have an extended amount of time to learn all this stuff. I always say that anatomy is like learning a completely different language, because it truly is. You're learning contractions, you're learning all these weird muscle names and how, and joints, and how it all comes together. And in your regular teacher training programs that you would see in person, they usually cram all of this anatomy information into 1 day, 2 days, 3 days, if you're lucky to have 3
Sometimes
days.
into just a few hours.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So that causes a few issues. It's not an efficient way to learn something brand new, but it's just not enough. You're not getting enough anatomy training for teaching bodies that are moving around in complex ways. So that's one of the reasons why I actually do love teaching through the online format, because they have a year to go through the program, and the year is enough time to get down, I don't want to say too much, but just the basics within the anatomy section of our training.
And to
So
really
the
become
year,
more proficient at it.
Correct. Like, you can't learn French in 3 weeks, you
Or
can
in a
learn
few
how to
hours.
say, exactly. You can learn the basics. You learn how to say, where's the bathroom, or what's a good restaurant, and that's kind of what we're teaching you, the where's the bathroom equivalent through anatomy. You learn the basics. It takes years and years of study to learn all of the anatomy stuff. And it's they're coming out with new studies constantly that are changing the anatomy portion of what we would teach. But we're teaching the basics over a full year. You can't learn the basics in 3 hours or 2 days. It's just not enough time.
Absolutely. One of the other things that we really focus on in our program is just the level of comprehensiveness, but also your ability, your being the student's ability to become the absolute best yoga teacher possible. So we do our best to give you all of the direction and instruction. And one of the things that Andrew and I really love to focus on and really think that make an individual a very high quality teacher beyond the knowledge-based stuff like the anatomy and the Yoga Sutras is the actual technique. And this was the thing that Andrew and I discussed that we wanted to really bring to you, the podcast listeners today, is a specific thing that we focus on, which is cueing. How to actually deliver cues as an instructor in a yoga class, because this is your voice. It's the way in which you primarily not just interact with, but instruct and coach and guide students. You're using your voice. So the way in which you speak, the things that you say, all of the words you use are so critically important in guiding a really great class. And over the many years that Andrew and I have worked together, we have run a bunch of teacher trainings together and have really, I guess, distilled or discerned some things that we would encourage you to perhaps leave behind in the repertoire, but also some things to consider and bring into the repertoire. So with that little introduction, Andrew, what in your mind is so important about refining and dialing in your cues as a yoga teacher?
Yeah. So, like you said, cues are the main way that you'll get your point across as a teacher as to what you want the students to do, or how to direct them. You might demonstrate every once in a while, or you might use a student to help demonstrate, but you're constantly using cues. Cues are 100% being used all the time. I find that the students that come through our program replicate what they see out in the world. So when they go to their local yoga studio, or they take classes online through YouTube, or through any online yoga studio, however they're taking their classes, right? Students that come to us, to our program, they are cueing from what they've heard previously. And it's always funny and interesting to me to see the cues that are out there that they hear their teachers using, and also certain parts of the country cue things differently. So I always find that unique. I remember must have been years ago, 2012, 2013, at one point, Alana, you had a recording from yourself teaching.
Yes.
Must have been back in like 2006, 2005. and your teacher would say, inhale, exhale, and then you played that recording of you teaching, and it was just funny to see how you picked that up from your teacher. So that's
wow, Andrew, thank you so
I
much for
know.
bringing
No,
that up.
I didn't mean to throw you under.
No, it's
I'm just
perfect. And
using
it's
that as
totally,
we all have those things.
it's totally true. It
Right.
was something that I hadn't really listened for or realized that I was doing this and emulating my teacher so closely with that very perhaps different and strange way of cueing. Inhale,
Yeah.
exhale. I was just doing it because that's what my teachers did, and there wasn't any real like self-inquiry about it or realization that it actually sounds strange until I played it for you guys.
Right. So one thing that I always recommend teachers do is to record their own classes. It doesn't even need to be a video recording,
Yeah.
just an audio recording, and play it back and take your own class. And you'll hear, oh, that was a good cue. Or why am I saying this so many times? Why am I saying that? Why am I doing this? So it's the most effective way to listen and improve your cues right away. One thing that I don't recommend doing, and this happens all the time, teachers will wrap up their class, they'll chant Om, however they like to end, and then they'll say, let me know if you have any feedback, or let me know if you, and the reason I don't like that strategy is because people are coming to your class for a reason. Usually that reason is because they enjoy your class.
Because
So
you're the expert.
exactly.
You're the
So
authority.
when you're asking 10 or 15 quote unquote non-experts for feedback, it's kind of empty. There's no substance behind it. They're usually like, oh, that was a great class, Alana. And yes, it might have been a great class, but the feedback great class doesn't actually help you improve,
Right.
or
Makes you
it's
feel good, but it doesn't
right,
actually give you
100%.
instructive, feedback.
Yeah. So I always recommend doing the whole audio recording thing,
Hmm.
playing it back to yourself, or finding other yoga teachers that aren't afraid to say, hey, stop doing this, or
Yeah,
every time you cue this pose, you do X, Y, and Z.
right.
So your own audio recording will be a huge eye opener to you,
Yep.
and other yoga teachers um, that are there and are willing to give you constructive feedback.
That is
So
such a good point. I always think of like when teachers ask students for feedback, it would be a little bit like a therapist asking the client at the end of a session, hey, how did I do?
right.
Well, if you're the client and suddenly the therapist is wondering if they did okay, it degrades the confidence that the client has in the therapist a bit. And it's kind of the same thing with students, being a teacher, being a spiritual leader, being a yoga instructor, it is the same kind of post and boundary as a professor to students in a higher educational setting, as a teacher to students in a public school setting, as a doctor to a patient, as a therapist to a client. It's the same sort of boundary. It's a really powerful and highly personally responsible role that we fill. And our work is to always get better, to always learn. And it's not that feedback isn't important, it's critically important. But generally, when you're learning or trying to evolve your own skills, the person you want advice or instruction from is someone who has more skills than you do. You want to go to someone who has been teaching longer or has more experience or expertise in the thing that you're asking for feedback from. So that's really, if you're asking for external feedback, I think the way to go. But this idea of recording your own classes, number one, it's terrifying
Yes.
because you are your own worst critic and you're going to hear all of the things that you're like, oh my gosh, what is that? And number two, nothing is going to help you evolve faster in your quality of teaching than recording your own class and taking it. This was something that I did actually for 2 straight years. After I went to a yoga teacher training on the other side of the country, I came back to my hometown, and there was no one around me teaching classes like I was teaching that I liked to take. And so at that time, the only solution was, well, I'll just record my class and take it the next day, and then I can at least do the practice in the way that I enjoy it, right? I did not at that time realize how much I would hear things in my voice and my cues that would frankly just, send shivers up my spine. I remember at one point I developed a cueing strategy where basically after I told the student to do anything at all, I would say good. So it'd be like, step your right foot forward. Good. Raise your
Yes.
arms up. Good. Bring the hands down. Good. Come back to plank. Good. And from
Good.
my point of view as a teacher, I'm like, oh, I'm encouraging them. But then as a student listening to it, you're just like, oh my gosh, that is so annoying.
No, that's one of the things that we look for throughout teacher training and mentoring students that go through the program. I have different categories, I guess I would say, of unnecessary cues.
Mm-hmm.
Over complimenting is one of those categories.
Absolutely.
Because essentially every time you say good, it devalues the actual compliment itself.
Right.
Everything, it's not that everything can't be good, but if everything is good and you're saying that everything is good constantly, then how do the students actually know when they're doing something good or not?
Right.
Right. So that's the strategy behind it. And I always like to present a solution to the problem in this case, saying the cue good. So instead of saying it constantly, the first thing is to be aware of it. And it could be any type of compliment, good or nice job or this, fantastic, whatever cue it is that the teacher is using. But so limiting the amount of times that you compliment the group as a whole. But also I find being super specific, knowing your students' names,
Mm-hmm.
and when you give a cue and the student actually does it, then the compliment is appropriate. So for example, if you're in warrior 2 pose and I say, and I can see Alana's elbows are not straight, and my cue is just straighten the elbows or bend the front knee, whatever my cue is. And then I see Alana actually do that cue. My compliment isn't good, it's good job, Alana, right? So now
Mm-hmm.
Alana, or whoever the student is, realizes she heard the cue, implemented the cue, and got positive feedback from it.
Yeah.
So now every single time you come into Warrior 2 again, you're going to do that.
I'm straightening my elbows.
Exactly. So it's super specific, student-specific feedback as well. So, but that, I mean, it goes into, you have to know your students' names. You have to be super aware of watching your students and seeing, okay, who did that cue, who didn't. So there's always a solution to not just stop saying good. That's not the feedback. It's, hey, stop saying good and instead do X, Y, and Z, the strategy that I just laid out.
So I'm intrigued, Andrew. What are some of your other categories of cues?
Oh, okay. So I have it ready. So there are, there's a bunch of them. I have what are called preparation cues.
Uh-huh.
So
we're going to prepare?
We're going to do this, guys. Or when you're ready. So
that's
one of my biggest pet. Yeah. The preparation cues are just unnecessary because if your student wasn't ready, they would not have shown up to class. So the fact that they are there and on their yoga mat means that they're ready. Just tell them what to do instead of, we're going to do mountain pose. You just say mountain pose, right? Mm-hmm. So you eliminate the preparation aspect of it. And after seeing, thousands of students' videos over the last 6 years, there are, 4 or 5 different phrases that I've recognized that fit into that preparation cue category. The biggest one that I've seen are what I call transition cues. So into, 2, 4, step the right foot forward, 4 warrior 1, come into plank pose, lower 2 chaturanga. Mm-hmm. It's these 2 into 4 cues that are just unnecessary. You don't need the inhale into plank pose. It's just inhale, plank pose. So
Right.
you insert, instead of the transition cue, you insert a mini pause. Inhale, plank, rather than inhale to plank. Oh, let's see what else we have here. Those are the two, into, and for transition cues are, I would say, are the most frequent.
Okay.
Not far behind is the addition of ing
Mm.
to their words. So inhaling, reaching your arms overhead. Exhaling, bending, folding over the weight of the hips. Inhaling, lifting to a flat back. So the ing addition. And similar to the transition cues, it's just not necessary. We don't speak like that through our normal daily activities. I don't say, hey, Alana, can you reaching up to the top shelf and grabbing me a plate so I can eating my dinner? I say, hey, Alana, can you reach up to the top shelf, grab me a plate so I can eat dinner, right? Whenever we get in front of a group of people, in this case, teaching a yoga class, we tend to change the way we speak for whatever reason.
Yeah.
And the ing is one of the most common ones that I see.
So give us an example of a little cue that would be without ing.
So inhale, step the right foot forward, come up, warrior one.
Awesome.
Exhale, hands on the mat, lower, chaturanga. And
Perfect.
when they add ing, they say inhaling, stepping forward, coming up into warrior one. Exhaling, lowering into chaturanga, right? So they add the ing, just not necessary.
Yep.
So that's a big one, I would say. Ing, to, into, for. And then one of my other pet peeves, and you mention all the time as well, is what we call the yoga teacher voice. That's its own.
Oh,
Its own
Andrew,
category.
please tell us more about that one.
So the yoga teacher voice is funny. It will be something that you'll hear if you record your own class. You'll definitely hear it. Teachers try to portray they try to portray yoga through their voice, the calmness and the prettiness of it, and it starts to sound very sing-songy, and you start to teach like this: warrior one, beautiful, beautiful job. Okay, now warrior two. And it's this very sing-songy, like pretty voice that teachers try to use. And um, I think that they're trying to portray the prettiness and the actual essence of yoga through their voice. Again, not necessary. Just speak normally. So when I'm teaching a yoga class, this is my normal voice. I'm speaking like this. It might be louder depending on if there's 25 people in the room and they all need to hear me, So the volume might increase or decrease based on class size, but ideally it is your normal speaking voice.
I think all of the things that you're talking about really go along with the idea that as yoga teachers and spiritual leaders, we're here to take the seat of leadership. It is a leadership role. We are instructing others, whether it's just instructing them how to do a sun salutation or whether it's instructing them on the finer points of meditation. We're here to be instructive, and there's a lot of credibility that comes along with our voice, with our language. Using words that end in ing, it's a very passive tone of voice. It's a very passive way to speak. To continuously add the filler words additionally into a class where they're not necessary just takes up more time than we really need to. I find that's another thing I was going to mention, that new students, or new teachers rather, they tend to try to fill up every single moment of the class with words because it feels so awkward to just stand in a room of people and do nothing or say nothing, when really as a student you're so grateful for the space or the quiet or just the moment to listen to the playlist or to listen to your own breath. But as a teacher, it's an indication, I think, usually of nervousness, that we
Mhm.
want to fill that space. We want to keep talking. And remember, as a leader, we have confidence. We are confident in what we do. And the only things we need to say are truly just that which needs to be said. Being concise is such a gift and a skill set as an instructor.
100%. And I think going back to the point you made a minute ago, it's a mental shift where you
Yeah.
need to view yourself as the teacher rather than friends with these people that are in your class.
Yeah.
Think of, like, go back to fifth grade math class. Like, your teacher got up, you were the student, you knew that he or she was the teacher, and that they had more information on this topic than you did. They didn't say, okay, guys, when you're ready, we're going to try to. No, they said, here's how to do addition. 2 plus 2 equals 4. And now go back to your desk and do these 10 multiple or addition uh, questions or whatever.
Problems.
Yeah, whatever. Shows my knowledge of math, right? No. uh, but then, so they just told you what to do. And as the teacher, that's what your job is.
Mhm.
Tell them what to do. Inhale, right foot forward, warrior one. That's the pose. Get them into it. And then I get this feedback a lot where, oh, that's so mean or too direct. But no, it's what the students are there for. They're
Mhm.
there to be told what to do.
Yeah.
And then again, going back to the fifth grade math class, your teacher sent you back to do these math problems, and he or she sat there in silence for 10 minutes while you did this. So it goes back to what you were saying, how silence is, students crave that almost. They
Yeah.
want to get in the pose and be silent in it for a little bit.
Absolutely. There's going to be, for many people, it is true that they spend all day, making big decisions,
Hmm.
having to do and focus and sometimes force things in their lives. They're responsible, and it's such a gift for many, many people to become just relax that and to be guided, and to, through that surrender and guidance, to learn something about oneself. It allows us to go deeper. So it's just the role of teacher and student in any capacity. It's not hierarchical. There isn't an idea of submission. It's not submission. It's just
Hmm.
letting go, release, surrender. There isn't any malice here. It's not mean to instruct people or to guide people. In fact, it's actually, the idea of it is that we're serving their highest good. We're here to, especially as yoga teachers, to try and elevate people, whether it be to elevate the way they feel in their body or the way they feel in their mind. We're here to elevate that. And sometimes that requires us to say, in an instructive way, inhale,
Hmm.
exhale. Because I know that if you do that right now, you're just going to feel better. So, hey, inhale. And that's all you need to say. There's nothing additionally that needs to be said. And, being concise is such a gift.
Right. No, and look at your demographic of students in your class. Like, a lot of these students are mothers or fathers, or they own a
Yeah.
business, or they're a teacher. And, like, imagine how nice it would be if you're a teacher and you're teaching sixth grade science and you're telling sixth graders what to do all day,
Uh-huh.
right? That could be mentally and emotionally tiring for you. So when
Yeah.
you come to a yoga class at 4 p.m. after you just got out of school, and someone else is going to tell you what to do for an hour or an hour and 50 minutes, how nice that must be to just say, I don't have to tell people what to do for an hour. Someone else is going to
Mhm.
tell me what to do.
Well, the other thing too is, like, to learn is to be receptive,
Hmm.
right? In the process of learning, whether we do it in a more Eastern style where we don't ask questions and we simply take on the information, or whether we do it in a more Western style where we do challenge and question and raise our hands. Either way, learning requires receptivity. And in order to receive something, something has to be given.
Hmm.
So, as the teacher in that role, our role is to give, to provide, to divulge, to instruct. And the student's role for that period of time is simply to receive the instruction, to take it on within themselves, obviously question it if necessary, reject what doesn't work for them. But the only way questioning or rejection occurs is if we take it and receive it first. So this is just the dynamic, just the process. And I think this is really a worthy discussion because we see so many students have difficulty kind of overcoming that and really
Yeah.
asserting that role as teacher.
Yeah, it's a transformational process, like any teacher training is. And then once they overcome that hurdle, um, it really, you can see the difference. It's crazy. I'll see the difference um, from one video to the next.
Uh-huh.
They'll submit a
Absolutely.
video on Monday, and then
Yeah.
they'll submit this, and I'll send them feedback on that video, and say, hey, resubmit this, and it takes them 2 or 3 days to overcome this mental hurdle. And then
Mm-hmm.
on Thursday or Friday when they resubmit, it's like, holy crap, is this person the same person that I just gave feedback to on
Yeah,
Monday?
absolutely.
Um, so that's the awesome part about this online process, is that it's a constant process of fine tuning and improving what is not up to our standards.
Absolutely. So, you've talked a lot, Andrew, about in terms of cueing the things that we should take away from our language, taking away the INGs, taking away the erroneous complements, taking away the extra filler words or the preparatory words. Is there anything we should add in to our language as we instruct?
That's a good question. Silence was going to be one of those things that I
Yeah.
brought up. I mean, we hit on that a lot earlier. I mean, it's nice to just lay there in. I mean, I've taken classes where I'm in there in shavasana, and the teacher keeps talking, and in my head I'm like, oh, just be quiet for 3 minutes, right? So silence is one of those things that definitely should be added in.
Hmm.
Um, I think besides that, it's just figuring out what works for you as an instructor and your specific demographic of students. I mentioned earlier that there are different ways of cueing and certain things throughout the country, and different uh, sections of the country will be receptive to different things. So you might be teaching for a group of football players at a high school, and you need to add in something different for them than you would if you're teaching at the YMCA to a group of 55 plus seniors, right? So understanding your demographic,
Yeah.
that's a bigger teacher discussion, but I think that is a huge part of realizing when to add certain things in, what to add in, that sort of stuff.
I think maybe I would suggest adding in yourself, just being yourself. And again, this comes from, as Andrew so wonderfully divulged, my own
Yeah.
personal experience too, that when I first started teaching, of course, I was trying to be my teachers. I was trying to literally use their voice to teach. And it's difficult for the yoga and the instruction to truly become your own when you're doing things as exactly as somebody else did them. So,
Mm-hmm.
this does take time. It takes evolution. It takes maturity as a teacher to really just be yourself as you're teaching, to not feel you need to adapt the style or the timbre of your voice, to not need to fill every single second. It just takes a little time. But I think the awareness of these things will go a long way.
And on that point, I think duplicating what successful and impressionable teachers are doing is a great thing. Taking a
Yeah.
variety of classes and seeing what they're doing. I'll sit and I'll watch a Dharma Talk video for our students. I'm like, that is Alana. And it's not you, but it's one of the students. And what that student did was they, essentially duplicated what your Dharma Talk was on that topic. And part of it is great because what they're saying and
Yeah.
everything that makes sense. Part of me was like, I wish they added in a little bit more of their own flavor and style. But then as their mentor, I need to realize that takes time.
Yeah. Right.
They're learning this information, 2 days ago, and now I'm asking them to record a video for me, which is a little bit intimidating to sit there and record yourself and then submit it to your teacher. But the process of, hey, they just learned this stuff, let's get them comfortable speaking about it.
Right.
And then over the next 2 years or 3 years or however long it takes, they will start to take Alana's voice or my voice or whatever the feedback was, and mold it into their own teaching style.
Right. And that's really the goal, is to make everybody their own individual best yoga teacher possible.
100%. Yeah.
Yeah. Andrew, this discussion was great. Is there anything else that we didn't chat about or left out or that you wanted to cover in terms of cueing?
No, I mean, finding appropriate and really good feedback is important for this. Don't ask your students that are taking your class because they're taking your class because they like it, because they like the cues that you're giving already. And it's just not going to help you improve. So record yourself, take your own class. You don't even have to take the class, just record it and sit on the couch that night and play it back for yourself. Get feedback from other teachers that might have more expertise in this area than you do, but continue to learn, take trainings. There are cue specific trainings that you can take, that, sign up for another 200 hour. I had this discussion with somebody yesterday who had already taken a 200 hour and she wanted to move on to the 300 hour. But through the course of the conversation, I picked up on that she really wanted to improve her basic teaching skills. And I said, well, if you feel like you already have the topics of a 300 hour down, learning how to guide a meditation or lead a class on the Bhagavad Gita or different higher up topics that you would learn in a 300 hour, and you really want to improve the basics of your teaching, your foundation, then go take another 200 hour training. And she's like, well, that's going backwards. I've already taken, and I'm like, not if that's what you need.
Right.
It just means that you didn't learn this stuff in your original 200 hour, and seeking out another 200 hour program that does include all of what you need is the way to go for you right now.
Yeah, that
and once
makes
you
total
finish
sense.
that, then move on to the 300 or whatever it may be. But
right.
It's our program offers this. That there's different ways to go about improving your cueing skills and your overall teaching foundation. I mean, we went over probably 10 cues that I hear, but I'm looking at my list now. There's 50 to 60 of them that I have on this list that I'm constantly seeing here through my videos. So, that's why I say continue to seek out further education on your skills that you think need improvement.
Awesome. That's great advice, Andrew. So thank you so much for being on the podcast. And I know that people are going to want to hear more from you and learn more from you. So where can they do that?
They can find me at the Kaivalya Yoga Method Teacher Training. That's really the only place I am at right now. I mean, especially with COVID happening, I'm not teaching any public classes. And even before COVID, I was teaching very few, 1 or 2 a week, just because the online path and direction is where I spend most of my time, most of my focus. So that you can find me online. alanak.com is where I'm located, mainly with the full 500 hour program. Alana does have a lot of programs in there that you'll see me in randomly, but 99% of my time and focus is for the students that take our teacher training. So, and I really do.
You're super involved in it.
100%. I mean, I'm on the Facebook group every single day answering questions, and it really is truly a one-on-one training. I kept mentioning, the differences or the benefits of being online throughout this whole podcast, but it truly is one-on-one, and that's rare. You take a teacher training in person, it's 10, 15, 20 students with one teacher, sometimes two. And it's not fair to the teacher that has 20 students, but it's just not his or her, they don't have enough time to individually interact with 20 students,
And to
and
see
give them,
everything that they're doing and learning and really be
impossible.
comprehensive with their feedback. Yeah.
It's not possible. So that's the difference between an in-person and an online training, especially our online training, is the full support and mentorship that you receive on literally every single assignment. And our Facebook group is awesome. We have thousands of students in there that are helping one another out. So it's a really cool community that we've built all online, and I love it. So that's where you can find me. If you need me, reach out to me through there. My email is Andrew, ANDREW, @alanak.com. If you have any questions for me, you can shoot them over to me, and I'd be more than happy to help you out and answer anything you might have.
Awesome. Andrew, thank you so much for joining the podcast finally, and we will have you
Finally.
back at the future, I'm sure.
Hopefully you sooner than 40. What are we at now? 42? So we have to go another 40 episodes. 41. 82, I'll be back.
82, you'll be back. All right, we'll plan on it. Thank you, Andrew.
Thank you, Alana.